Mitchum said a great thing. He said every actress is 21 people, because there would be so many people getting the actress together that there was a tremendous burden on the way you looked for an actress. And maybe you could just start out by
Well, I think women fall into different categories. Actually, there were the girls, and then there were the leading women. I mean, for instance, Lillian Gish was always a girl, really, a quite remarkable one. By the same token, Greer Garson was never a girl. She was always a leading woman. You know, I'm making myself clear.
absolutely.
Or Myrna Loy or Maureen O'Hara, they were grown-ups. Jean Crane was always a girl, so on and so forth. And the industry that went into creating those images was absolutely very sophisticated and extremely complex. What each one of those girls or women would represent inside the studio system's idea. For instance, the concept to initially try and make Alice Faye Jean Harlow didn't work. And all those pictures of Alice that way are absolutely, they're adorable, they're funny. And then suddenly they hit upon the Alice Faye concept, which was herself, and it was adorable. Because the work is so hard, I think it's twice as difficult for a woman to be in this profession than it is for a man, because the wear and tear is excruciating. And they have, for the most part, a lesser span of time than the men because of the clock that is going. With rare exceptions, people like Jean Arthur, or who was much older than anybody ever knew she was. That was quite fascinating. Jean was born in 1900, which means that when she was doing films like Mr. Smith and Mr. Deed, she was then 37, 38 years old, which defied the law of gravity. In other words, she was 10 years older than her leading men. No. And
Okay.
she was 10 years older than leading men for the most part, and but people never knew her age. People never knew the real age of Greer Garson or of Irene Dunne, really. They were much older than was given out. By the same token, certain people were made to be older than they were. Linda Darnell, with whom I was in school, is probably one of the most beautiful creatures I ever saw in my whole life. Much more beautiful off-screen, really, than on. She was made to be 3 years older because she was such a grown-up at 14 and a half, 15 years old, that it seemed not on to have this girl playing young married girl, like in Daytime Wife with Tyrone Power, when she was merely 16 years old. You know.
What you're saying is really interesting, because so many actresses and actors, but for our purposes actresses, are having to kind of concept themselves and decide where they're going to be. But what you're saying, I think, is that the studio would develop a concept, a unique
after all, the studio system was an extremely shrewd business idea. And when they put people under contract, as much as the actor might not appreciate the being slaughtered that way, they were a commodity, a property. So if somebody was put under contract in those years, the hope was from the employer that they would get a good deal of mileage out of their investment, so, as opposed to today, where the actor has no such, for better or worse, because there were positive and negative aspects to that system. But today, no performer has that sort of protection or is brought along. And as much as people like Betty Davis or James Cagney would bitch about, the horrors of being under contract, Betty was the first to say in the later years that it's out of that grueling system that she, number one, learned her craft, the craft of the business, and developed a career. And even though there were clinkers and she sued and so on and so on for better scripts and so on, still the experience was going on. When you think of it, Myrna Loy's 67th motion picture was The Thin Man. That's when she became what we term today a superstar. But she had made 67 films before that, as a quasi-star, as a young neophyte, so on and so on. There's no opportunity for that to happen today. There's no opportunity if one gets into a series and you're playing exactly the same thing all the time. And with a woman like Myrna Loy, the amount of experience in 10 years was extraordinary. Jean Harlow was dead at 26. She'd made, in 7 years, somewhere between 13 or 14 films.